The small human ship cut through the red atmosphere of Vethra Prime like a silver needle. Commander Kang Do-yoon watched through the viewport as endless stretches of crimson dust spread below them. No green anywhere, no blue oceans. Just red. Earth in strange crystal towers that jutted up from the ground like broken teeth. "Landing in 5 minutes, Commander," said pilot Lee Yemin from the front seat. His voice was steady, but Do-yoon could hear the worry underneath. They had all seen the images from the probe ships. This world was dying. Dr. Park Miran looked up. From her scanner, "The air is breathable but thin. We will need the breathing masks for extended work outside." She paused and frowned at her readings. "Something strange, though. The soil composition keeps changing, like it is alive somehow." Engineer Kim Hyeri checked her equipment one more time. "All systems ready for first contact protocol. Though I have to wonder what we can offer them that their own technology cannot provide." Do-yoon nodded but said nothing. The reports from Earth Command were clear. The Vethari had reached out to humanity with a desperate plea for help. Their world was failing and their people were dying. What they needed, no one knew yet. That was why his small team was here. The ship touched down on a flat area near what looked like a city. But as they stepped outside, Do-yoon realized it was more like a collection of crystal formations that had been shaped into dwellings. The structures were beautiful but felt empty, hollow. A group of beings approached them across the red ground. The Vethari were tall, much taller than humans, with skin that looked like frosted glass. They had 4 arms each and moved with a flowing grace that reminded Do-yoon of dancers. But there was something wrong with them. Their bodies seemed to be fading, becoming more transparent with each step. The leader stopped 10 feet away and spoke, in a voice like wind chimes. The translation device on Do-yoon's belt crackled to life. "Welcome, beings from the star called Sun. I am High Keeper Velthara. We are grateful you answered our call." Do-yoon stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Commander Kang Do-yoon of Earth. We received your message and came as quickly as we could. How can we help your people?" Velthara's large eyes, which were the color of deep water, seemed to grow sadder. "Come, we will show you what we have lost. Perhaps then you will understand why we face the end of all things." They walked through the crystal city. Do-hyun noticed that there were very few Vethari visible. Those they did see were all becoming more transparent, like living ghosts. Children clung to their parents, their small bodies barely visible at all. "How many of your people remain?" Dr. Park Miran asked gently. "Less than 10,000 across our entire world," Velthara replied. "Once we numbered in the millions. But as our world dies, so do we. We are connected to this place in ways your science may not understand." They entered a large crystal building at the center of the city. Inside, the walls were covered with images that seemed to move and shift. Do-hyun gasped as he saw what they depicted. The same red world, but alive. Covered in forests of silver trees that reached toward purple skies. Rivers of clear water winding between hills covered in strange flowers. And the Vethari themselves, but different, solid, real. Their bodies glowing with inner light as they tended. Gardens and built cities that looked like works of art. "This was Vethra Prime 1,000 of your years ago," Velthara explained. "Our world was alive then. The great forests spoke to us, and we spoke to them. The planet itself had consciousness, awareness. We were partners in making life flourish." Engineer Kim Hyeri stepped closer to examine the images. "What happened? Some kind of disaster?" "We do not know," Velthara said, and for the first time her voice carried emotion. "It began slowly. The trees started to silence themselves. The rivers slowed and then stopped. The very ground began to forget how to nurture life. We tried everything our science could devise. We built the crystal formations to store energy and life force. We created great machines to clean the air and soil. Nothing worked. Dr. Park Miran was scanning the walls with her instruments. These images are not just pictures. They contain actual genetic data, biological information about how things used to grow here. Lothara nodded. The walls, remember. They are made from the crystallized remains of the great trees. All that is left of our partnership with the living world. They moved deeper into the building, passing rooms filled with Vethari who lay on crystal beds. Their bodies were so transparent now that Do-Yun could barely see them. Our children, Lothara whispered. They fade fastest. Without the life force of our world to sustain us, we become like shadows. Soon we will be only memory. Pilot Lee. Yemen knelt beside one of the beds. A young Vethari, no bigger than a human child, looked up at him with eyes that held ancient sadness. The child reached out with one thin arm and touched Lee's hand. For a moment, the child's body seemed to become more solid, more real. Did you see that? Kim Hyeri whispered to the others. When they touched, the child became more visible. Dr. Park Miran was already taking readings. There is some kind of energy exchange happening. The human bioelectric field is interacting with the Vethari physiology. Lothara had seen it too. Her large eyes widened with something that might have been hope. In our ancient texts, there are stories of other worlds where beings like you once lived. Beings with dense life force and strong connection to growing things. We thought they were only myths. Commander Do-Yun felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. His small team might be the only hope for an entire species and world. But what could 4 humans do that the advanced Vethari civilization could not? Show us more. He said simply, show us everything. Maybe together we can find an answer. As they continued through the crystal halls, Do-Yun noticed something else. Where his team had walked, tiny cracks appeared in the red floor, and in those cracks, impossibly, were tiny specks of green. As if something long dormant was trying to wake up, the planet was listening. And somehow, it remembered what life was supposed to look like, but time was running out. The Vethari were fading faster each day, and once they were gone, any chance of understanding how to heal their world would die with them. Do-Yun looked at his team and saw the same determination. In their eyes that he felt in his heart, they would find a way. They had to, because sometimes the most important discoveries came not from having the right technology or knowledge, but from simply refusing to give up when others needed help. And humans, whatever else they might lack, had never been good at walking away from impossible problems. The red world waited around them, holding its breath for an answer that might never come. But Do-Yun and his team were just getting started. 3 days had passed since the human team arrived on Vethra Prime. Dr. Park Miran worked tirelessly in the makeshift laboratory they had set up inside the Crystal City. Her instruments hummed quietly as they analyzed soil samples, crystal fragments, and the strange energy readings that seemed to pulse through the ground itself. "This is impossible," she muttered, staring at her screen. "The soil composition is changing every few hours. Not random changes either. It is like the planet is trying to remember something." Commander Kang Do-Yun looked over her shoulder at the data. Charts and numbers filled the display, but what caught his attention were the wave patterns. They looked almost like brain activity. "What are you thinking, Doctor?" Miran pointed to a series of readings. "The crystal formations are not just storing energy, they are storing information, memories, if you will. The entire planet appears to have some form of collective consciousness buried deep in its structure." Engineer Kim Hyeri joined them from across the room where she had been studying. "The crystal walls. I have been measuring the energy patterns in these formations. They respond to biological presence. When we humans walk past, the energy spikes increase. When the Vethari approach, the crystals dim slightly." "That makes sense," Miran said excitedly. "The Vethari told us they have become too ethereal, too disconnected from physical matter. But humans are dense with biological energy. We might be triggering something in the planetary memory system. Highkeeper Velthara entered their workspace, her transparent form barely visible in the crystal light. Several younger Vethari followed. Their bodies so faded they looked like heat mirages. "We have brought the deep archives," Velthara announced. "Our most ancient records. Perhaps they will help you understand what we ourselves have forgotten." The young Vethari carried crystalline tablets that glowed with soft internal light. When they placed the tablets on the table, images immediately began to project into the air above them. But these were not the beautiful scenes of the living world they had seen before. These were older, stranger. "The blood memories," Velthara explained. "From the time before our ancestors learned to live in harmony with the world spirit." The projections showed early Vethari, their bodies more solid than the current generation. They were performing rituals around massive silver trees. The Vethari would cut their palms and let their blood drip onto the roots of the great trees. In response, the trees would glow brighter and the whole forest would pulse with life. "Blood bonding," Dr. Miran breathed. They were sharing their life force directly with the planetary consciousness. More images flickered past. Vethari children playing in groves where the trees seemed to respond to their emotions. Vethari elders sitting in meditation as root systems grew up around them, connecting them to the vast network of forest consciousness. And always the exchange of blood for life, life for growth, growth for harmony. "But we evolved beyond this," Velthara said sadly. "We became more spiritual, less physical. We thought we were ascending to a higher form of existence. Instead, we broke the connection that kept our world alive." Pilot Li Yamin had been quiet throughout the explanation. Now he stepped forward, his face troubled. "I have been having dreams since we arrived. Dreams of walking through silver forests. In the dreams, the trees are calling to me." Speaking without words, Kim Hyeri looked at him with concern. "The atmospheric readings show unusual activity at night. Electromagnetic patterns that could affect human brain waves. It is not the atmosphere," Velthara said softly. "It is the world spirit. It recognizes something in you that it has been searching for. Something we can no longer provide." Dr. Miran was running new scans on her instruments. "I need to test something. Commander, may I take a small blood sample from each team member?" Within minutes, she had the results. Her face went pale as she stared at the data. "What is it?" Do Yun asked. "Human blood contains trace elements that match the mineral composition needed to activate dormant biological systems on this planet. But more than that." She turned to face them all. "Our genetic markers, our DNA patterns, they contain information sequences that the planetary consciousness can read and interpret." She pulled up a comparison chart. "Look at this. Human cellular structure contains what we call junk DNA sequences. That seemed to serve no purpose. But when I run them through the Vethari crystal analysis system, they translate into environmental restoration protocols." "What does that mean in simple terms?" Yemen asked. "It means humans might be genetically compatible with this planet's biological systems. We could potentially re-establish the connection the Vethari lost." Velthora's form flickered with what might have been excitement. "You are saying your people could blood bond with our world spirit?" "Theoretically, yes. But the process would be much more intense than what your ancestors experienced. Humans have denser biological patterns. The connection would be stronger, more permanent." Engineer Kim Harry was checking her readings again. "I am seeing increased activity in the crystal formations throughout the city. Whatever we are discussing, the planet is listening." As if responding to her words, the crystal walls around them began to glow more brightly. The images in the ancient tablets shifted and changed, showing new scenes. Humans walking through the silver forests. Human hands touching the great trees. human blood mixing with alien soil and bringing forth new kinds of growth. The world spirit is showing us possibilities, Velthara whispered. It is dreaming of what could be. Dr. Miran continued her analysis through the night. What she discovered made her both excited and deeply worried. The planetary consciousness was not just looking for a simple biological connection. It wanted a complete merger. A human consciousness willing to join permanently with the world spirit to guide the restoration process. The person who makes this connection would become part of the planet forever, she explained to the team the next morning. Their memories, their experiences, their entire sense of self would merge with the planetary consciousness. They would die as an individual, but live on as part of something much larger. Commander Do-Hyun stared out at the red wasteland beyond the Crystal City. In the distance, he could see more Vethari settlements, each one smaller and more faded than the last. Millions of lives hung in the balance. How certain are you that this would work? He asked. Based on the genetic compatibility and the planetary response patterns, I would say 90% chance of success. But the human volunteer would not survive the process in any recognizable form, Li Yemen spoke up quietly. In my dreams, the trees show me what this world could become. Not just restored to what it was, but something new. A hybrid ecosystem that could serve as a template for healing other dead worlds. The world spirit grows stronger with each passing hour, Velthara observed. Your presence here has awakened. Something that has slept for centuries. But it needs more than just proximity. It needs unity. As the day progressed, the crystal formations throughout the city began to pulse in unison. The planetary consciousness was fully awake now, and it was waiting for an answer. Dr. Miran finished her final calculations. If we do this, the changes would be irreversible. Not just for the volunteer, but for the entire planet. We would be creating something that has never existed before. The team stood together in the growing crystal light, each of them understanding that they faced a choice that would determine the fate of 2 species and potentially many more worlds in the future. The planet waited around them, patient but desperate, holding the memory of forests in its crystal heart and the dream of new growth in its awakening consciousness. Tomorrow, they would have to decide who would pay the ultimate price for life itself. Commander Kang Do-Hyun could not sleep. He stood on the crystal balcony of their temporary quarters, looking out over the dying red landscape of Vethra Prime. The twin moons cast strange shadows through the thin atmosphere, and in those shadows, he could almost see the ghosts of the silver forests that once grew here. Dr. Park Miran found him there just before dawn. You are thinking about the choice, she said softly. How can I not? Do-Hyun replied. We have the power to save an entire species and world, but the cost. He shook his head. How do I ask someone to give up their life? How do I make that decision for another person? You do not make the decision for them, Miran said. You give them the information they need to make it themselves. Inside their quarters, Pilot Li Yemen was wide awake, sitting cross-legged on his sleeping mat. His eyes were closed, but his body was tense, as if he was fighting some internal battle. Engineer Kim Hyeri watched him with concern. The dreams are getting stronger, are they not? Yemen opened his eyes. They seemed different somehow, deeper, as if he was seeing things the rest of them could not. It is not just dreams anymore. When I am awake, I can feel the planet calling. Like a voice in the back of my mind, showing me visions of what could be. What kind of visions? Do-Hyun asked as he and Miran rejoined the group. Forests that stretch across continents. But not just the silver trees the Vethari remember. New kinds of growth. Plants that combine Vethari biology with Earth genetics. Trees that can survive in multiple atmospheres. Ecosystems that could be planted on dead worlds throughout the galaxy. Yemen stood and walked to the window. The planetary consciousness is not just trying to restore what was lost. It wants to create something entirely new. A template for bringing life to places where life should not be able to exist. Dr. Miran checked her scanner readings. The energy patterns from the crystal formations have been increasing all night. The planet is becoming more active, more aware. A soft chiming sound filled the room. High Keeper Velthara materialized in their doorway, her transparent form barely visible in the morning light. Behind her stood several other Vethari, including some of the elders Doyun had not seen before. "We have been in council all through the dark hours," Velthara announced. "We have made a decision regarding your discovery." The Vethari elders moved into the room like flowing water. One of them, so old and faded that he was more suggestion than substance, spoke in a voice like distant thunder. "I am Memory Keeper Ashtaren. I have lived through the slow death of our world for 800 of your years. I have watched our children fade into nothing. I have felt our world spirit grow silent and cold." He paused, his ancient eyes fixed on each human in turn. "We will not ask this sacrifice of you. We would rather face extinction with honor than purchase our survival with the blood of those who came to help us." Commander Doyun felt a mixture of relief and frustration. "With respect, Memory Keeper, that is not your choice to make alone." "The human speaks truth," said another Vethari elder. "If one of them chooses freely to make this bond, should we refuse their gift out of pride?" Velthara stepped forward. "There is something else you should know. Our deep archives contain records of what happens when a consciousness merges with the world spirit. The individual does not simply die. They become part of something eternal. Their memories, their experiences, their very essence becomes woven into the fabric of the living world." "Lee." Yemen turned from the window. "In the visions, I can see through the eyes of ancient Vethari who made smaller bonds with the world spirit centuries ago. They are still aware, still present in some form. They have become the memory and wisdom that guides the planet's growth." "Doctor." Miran was studying her instruments again. "The biological readings support this. The crystal formations contain complex patterns that could preserve and maintain consciousness indefinitely. It would be a form of immortality, just not in a human body." Engineer Kim Haeri spoke up quietly. "I have been running calculations on the energy requirements for planetary restoration. The process would take approximately 1 year to complete once initiated. During that time, the merged consciousness would essentially be rebuilding the ecosystem from the molecular level up. 1 year to give birth to a new kind of world," Yemen said softly. "I have seen it in the dreams. The forests that will grow here will be unlike anything that has ever existed. They will carry human memories and Vethari wisdom and planetary consciousness all woven together." Commander Doyin looked at each member of his team. He could see the weight of the decision in their faces. They were all good people, brave people. Any one of them might volunteer for this ultimate sacrifice. "There is something I need to tell you all," he said finally. "Earth Command explicitly ordered us not to take any actions that would risk human lives. They want us to gather information and return with recommendations for a larger mission. But Earth Command does not know what we have discovered here," Dr. Moran pointed out. "They could not have anticipated this situation." "That is true, but if we proceed, we will be acting against direct orders. Whoever volunteers will be giving their life for a cause that our government has not approved." Memory Keeper Ashtareen spoke again. "In our ancient texts, there are stories of great heroes who chose to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. They are remembered not as tragic figures, but as the foundation upon which new ages were built." Lee Yemen walked back to the center of the room. "I need to tell you all something. Last night, the world spirit showed me what will happen if we do nothing. Not just to the Vethari, but to other worlds. There are dead planets throughout this region of space. Worlds that could be brought back to life using the restoration template we would create here." He looked directly at Commander Doyun. This is not just about saving one species or one world. This is about creating a new form of life that could heal entire star systems. The crystal walls around them began to glow brighter, as if the planet itself was responding to their conversation. Images formed in the crystal surfaces, showing world after world being transformed from barren rock into thriving ecosystems. The world spirit is showing us the greater purpose, Velthara said with wonder. The sacrifice would not just restore Vethra Prime. It would begin a new age of life throughout the galaxy. Dr. Miran was taking readings of the crystal projections. These are not just fantasies. The energy patterns suggest these are actual calculations. Probability maps showing how the restoration process could be replicated on other worlds. Commander Do-Yun felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. Like a heavy cloak. This was no longer just a first contact mission or even a rescue operation. This was potentially the most important decision in human history. I need time to think, he said. We all need time to consider what this means. But even as he spoke, he could see in the crystal walls around them that time was running out. The Vethri were fading faster now, their connection to life growing weaker by the hour. Soon, it might be too late for any choice at all. The planet waited around them, patient but desperate, holding its breath for a decision that would determine the future of countless worlds and the fate of billions of lives yet to be born. Outside, the red sun climbed higher into the alien sky, marking another day closer to extinction or transformation. The choice could not be delayed much longer. The decision came at sunset on their 7th day on Vethra Prime. Commander Kang Do-Yun stood before the entrance to the core temple, the most sacred place on the planet according to the Vethri. The massive crystal structure rose from the red earth like a mountain of living light, its faceted surfaces reflecting the dying rays of the alien sun. Are you certain about this? Dr. Park Miran asked for the 10th time. Her face was pale but resolute. She had spent the last 3 days preparing for this moment, analyzing every possible outcome, ensuring that the process would work as intended. I am certain, Do-Yun replied. This is my responsibility as mission commander. I will not ask someone else to make a sacrifice I am not willing to make myself. Pilot Li Yemen stepped forward. Commander, with respect, you are not the right choice for this. The world spirit has been calling to me specifically. The dreams, the visions, the connection I feel to this place. It chose me. The planet needs someone who can bridge the gap between human and Vethri consciousness. Engineer Kim Hyeri added. Yemen has shown the strongest response to the planetary awareness. His mind is already partially connected to the world spirit. Do-Yun looked at his team, these brave people who had followed him across the galaxy. In the end, they were right. The choice was not his to make alone. The world spirit will decide, he said finally. We will all enter the temple together. Whoever the planet chooses, we will support that decision. High Keeper Velthara approached them with a group of elderly Vethri. Their forms were so transparent now that they seemed to be made of moonlight and memory. The entire remaining population of our world has gathered to witness this ceremony, she announced. Never before has an off-world consciousness attempted to bond with our world spirit. Today we may see the birth of something entirely new. They entered the core temple together. The interior was vast with crystal formations that spiraled up toward a central chamber hundreds of feet above. The air hummed with energy that made human teeth ache and Vethri bodies glow, with inner light dot at the center of the temple floor was a circular platform carved from a single massive crystal. Ancient symbols covered its surface, and channels cut into the crystal led from the center to dozens of smaller formations around the chamber. The bonding altar, Velthara explained. Here, our ancestors would commune with the world spirit in the deepest rituals. No Vethri has been able to activate it for over 300 years. As they approached the altar, the crystal began to glow, Faint at first, then brighter, until the entire chamber was filled with pulsing light. The symbols on the altar's surface began to move, rearranging themselves into new patterns. "It recognizes us," Dr. Miran whispered, her instruments detecting. Massive energy spikes throughout the temple. The planetary consciousness is fully awake now. Pilot Li Yamen stepped onto the altar platform. Immediately, the light intensified, and crystalline tendrils began to emerge from the surface, reaching toward him like living things. "The choice is made," he said, his voice strangely calm. "I can feel the world spirit welcoming me." Commander Do Yun grabbed his arm. "Yemen, you do not have to do this. We can find another way. There is no other way, Commander. And besides," Yemen smiled, "I have seen what comes next. It is beautiful." Dr. Miran began setting up her monitoring equipment around the altar. "I will record everything. The process, the energy patterns, the biological changes. If this works, we will need to understand how to replicate it." Engineer Kim Hyeri took position at the temple's control systems, such as they were. The ancient V3 technology was responding to her touch, interfaces coming alive that had been dormant for centuries. "All systems are ready," she reported. "The temple is channeling power from crystal formations across the entire planet. The world spirit is preparing for the bonding." High Keeper Velthara and the Vethri elders began to sing, their voices harmonizing in complex patterns that seemed to resonate with the crystal formations. The sound was beautiful and sad, like a farewell and a welcome combined. Jamin knelt on the altar and placed his hands on the central crystal formation. The tendrils of living crystal immediately wrapped around his wrists, and he gasped as the connection was made. "I can feel it," he said, his eyes wide with wonder. "The entire planet, every crystal formation, every grain of sand, every memory stored in the earth. It is all connected, all alive." Dr. Moran watched her instruments in fascination and horror. "His brain activity is spiking beyond anything I have ever seen, but it is not random. The patterns are organized, as if his consciousness is being integrated into a much larger system." The crystal tendrils began to spread up Yemen's arms, and where they touched, his skin took on a silvery glow. But he showed no signs of pain. Instead, his face was filled with a peace that seemed to come from deep within. "I can see the ancient forests," he said, his voice becoming distant. "The silver trees, the flowing rivers, the harmony between all living things. But I can also see what will come next. Forests that combine the best of human and Vethri biology. Ecosystems that can adapt to any environment." The bonding process accelerated. The crystal formations throughout the temple began to pulse in unison, and the Vethri song grew more complex, more beautiful. Yemen's body began to change, becoming more translucent, but somehow more solid at the same time. "His cellular structure is transforming," Dr. Moran reported, her voice filled with awe. "He is becoming something new. Neither fully human nor fully alien, but a bridge between both." Commander Do Yun watched his friend and colleague undergo the ultimate transformation. "Can you still hear us, Yemen?" "I hear everything," Yemen replied, though his voice now seemed to come from the crystals themselves as much as from his changing body. "I hear the songs of stones and the dreams of soil. I hear the memories of trees that died 1,000 years ago, and the hopes of seeds that have not yet been planted." The final phase of the bonding began. Yemen's consciousness expanded beyond his physical form, merging with the vast network of crystal formations that connected every part of the planet. His human memories began to flow into the world spirit. Childhood on Earth, his training as a pilot, his love of flying among the stars, his dreams of peace between different species. "The world spirit is learning what it means to be human," Velthara said with wonder. "It is gaining our visitors' capacity for hope, for sacrifice, for love that transcends species boundaries." As Yemen's physical form became fully integrated with the crystal altar, his consciousness touched every part of Vethra Prime simultaneously. The planet shuddered, not with pain but with joy, as dormant systems came online for the first time in centuries. "It is beginning," engineer Kim Hyeri announced, her instruments detecting massive changes in the planetary systems. Atmospheric composition is shifting, soil chemistry is changing. The restoration process has started. In the final moments of the transformation, Yemen's voice echoed through the temple one last time. "Tell Earth what we have done here. Tell them that sometimes the greatest gift we can give is ourselves. And tell them that I am not gone. I am everywhere now. I am the memory of forests and the dream of new worlds." The crystal altar pulsed with brilliant light, and then settled into a steady, peaceful glow. Where Pilot Lee Yemen had knelt, there was now a formation of living crystal that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. The bonding was complete. A human consciousness had joined with an alien world spirit, creating something entirely new. Around them, the first signs of change were already visible. Tiny green shoots were pushing up through cracks in the temple floor, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with new possibilities. The transformation of Vethra Prime had begun, guided by the sacrifice of a human, who chose to give his life so that others might live. And in the crystal formations throughout the planet, Li Yemen's consciousness began the work of rebuilding a world, carrying with him all the hopes and dreams of two species, reaching toward a future neither could have imagined alone. 1 Earth year had passed since the bonding ceremony at the core temple. Dr. Park Miran stood on the observation deck of the new research station, looking out over a landscape that defied belief. Where once there had been only red dust and dying, crystal formations, now stretched endless forests of silver and gold. The trees were unlike anything that ever existed in the galaxy. They combined the elegant height of the ancient Vethri forests with the robust adaptability of Earth vegetation. Their leaves shimmered with colors that shifted from silver to gold, to deep green depending on the light, and their trunks pulsed with a gentle bioluminescence that followed patterns eerily similar to human heartbeats. "The transformation is complete." "Ahead of all projections," reported engineer Kim Hyeri as she joined Miran on the deck. She had stayed on Vethra Prime to help establish the joint research facility, documenting every stage of the planet's rebirth. The forest network now covers 73% of the planet's surface. Ocean formation has begun on 2 continents, and the atmospheric composition has stabilized at levels that can support both human and Vethri life without assistance. Below them, groups of Vethri children played among the trees. But these were not the fading, transparent beings they had first encountered. The Vethri had evolved again, their bodies now showing veins of silver light that matched the patterns in the tree bark. They were solid, real, vibrant with life that flowed from their restored connection to the planetary consciousness. "Have you been able to communicate with him?" Miran asked, though she already knew the answer. "Every day," Hyeri replied softly. "He is everywhere now. Sometimes I can hear his voice in the wind through the leaves. Sometimes I see his smile in the patterns of light that play across the forest floor. He is not gone, Doctor. He has become something larger." A familiar figure approached across the deck. Commander Kang Do-yoon had returned to Vethra Prime 3 months ago, leading the first official joint human-Vethri research expedition. His hair was streaked with silver now, and his eyes held the weight of the decision that had changed everything. "The latest reports from the outer colonies are remarkable," he announced. "Seeds from the memory forest have successfully taken root on 7 different worlds. Dead planets that have been barren for millennia are showing their first signs of life in geological ages. The memory forest, as it had come to be called, was not content to remain on a single world. The hybrid trees produced seeds unlike anything in known biology. These seeds could survive in the vacuum of space, traveling between star systems and adapting to whatever conditions they found. Each one carried within its genetic structure the combined memories of human determination, Vethari wisdom, and planetary consciousness. High Keeper Velthara materialized beside them, her form now solid and glowing with inner light. The transformation of her people had been as dramatic as the restoration of their world. "The Council of Worlds has approved the proposal," she announced with obvious joy. "The Memory Forest restoration template will be shared with all member species. We are to establish training centers on 50 worlds to teach the bonding techniques to volunteers from different species." Dr. Miran nodded. "The biological compatibility studies show that the process can work with most carbon-based life forms, though each species will create a slightly different version of the forest ecosystem, each one unique but all connected," Commander Do-yoon observed. The Galactic Restoration Network Yemen envisioned in his final moments. They walked together down into the forest itself, following paths that seemed to shift and change to accommodate their destination. The trees responded to their presence, branches moving aside to create openings, bioluminescent patterns brightening to light their way. In the heart of the forest stood the Memorial Grove, a circle of the largest and most magnificent trees on Onko, the planet. At their center was a crystal formation that pulsed with warm, steady light. This was where the original bonding altar had grown into something new, a focal point for the planetary consciousness that was once Pilot Lee Jae-min. As they entered the grove, the light from the central crystal intensified, and the air filled with a sound like distant music. Other visitors were already there. Human researchers working alongside Vethari scholars. Children from both species playing games that seemed to involve communicating directly with the trees. Scientists from a dozen different worlds taking measurements and samples to understand how the restoration process worked. An elderly human woman sat in meditation near the central crystal. Dr. Miran recognized her as Lee Yemen's mother, who had traveled from Earth when she learned of her son's sacrifice. She came to the grove every day and claimed that she could feel her son's presence in the gentle warmth that emanated from the crystal. "The trees remember everything," Velthara explained to a group of young researchers. "Every conversation that takes place in the forest, every moment of joy or sadness, every act of love or sacrifice. They weave these memories into their growth patterns, creating a living library of experience that spans species and worlds." One of the researchers, a young Vethari scientist, raised her hand. "Is it true that the consciousness within the forest can predict the future?" "Not predict," Velthara corrected gently. "But the combined wisdom of human intuition, Vethari spiritual knowledge, and planetary awareness allows the forest consciousness to see patterns and possibilities that individual minds cannot perceive. It offers guidance to those who know how to listen." Commander Do-yoon approached the central crystal and placed his hand on its surface. Immediately, warmth spread up his arm, and he felt a familiar presence touch his mind. The communication was not in words, but in direct understanding. Images flowed through his consciousness. Other worlds, other forests beginning to grow. Species working together in ways that had never been possible before. The slow but steady expansion of life throughout regions of space that had been dead for millions of years. And through it all, the persistent sense of joy and purpose that had always been Lee Yemen's defining characteristic. Death had not diminished his optimism. If anything, becoming part of something vast and eternal had amplified his hope for the future. "He wants us to know that this is just the beginning," Do-yoon said as he stepped back from the crystal. "The memory forests will continue to spread, but they will need guardians, protectors who understand the sacrifice that made them possible." Dr. Miran was taking readings from the crystal formation. "The consciousness patterns are still growing more complex. As more worlds join the network, the collective intelligence becomes more sophisticated. We may be witnessing the birth of a truly galactic mind." As the day drew to a close, the forest prepared for the evening symphony. This was something that happened every sunset, as the trees throughout the world synchronized their bioluminescent displays and created patterns of light that could be seen from orbit. It was beautiful, but it was also a form of communication, a way for the planetary consciousness to share its thoughts and dreams with the universe. Tonight's display was particularly spectacular. Waves of silver and gold light flowed through the forest canopy, creating patterns that seemed to dance and play. Hidden within the display, those who knew how to look could see messages of hope and encouragement being broadcast to the growing network of memory forests throughout the galaxy. What do you think Yemen would say if he could see what his sacrifice has accomplished? Kim Hyeri asked as they watched the light show. Commander Doyen smiled. I think he would say that this was always the dream. Not just to save one world or one species, but to prove that life can triumph over death, that hope can overcome despair, and that sometimes the greatest victories come from those willing to give everything for others. The evening symphony reached its crescendo, and for a moment every tree in the forest pulsed with brilliant light. In that instant, every person in the grove felt the presence of the consciousness that guided the forest. The essence of a human pilot who had chosen to become something greater than himself. Li Yemen lived on, not as a memory but as a force for life and growth that would continue to spread throughout the galaxy for ages to come. His sacrifice had become the foundation for a new kind of existence, one where the boundaries between species, between individual and collective, between life and death, had been transformed into something beautiful and eternal. As the lights faded and the forest settled into its peaceful nighttime glow, the visitors began to make their way home. But the work continued. In research labs and meditation groves, in seed ships traveling to distant worlds, and in the dreams of children who would grow up in a galaxy where dead worlds could bloom again. The memory forest had become more than anyone had dared to hope. It was proof that love transcends species, that sacrifice creates rather than destroys, and that sometimes a single act of courage can change the fate of billions of lives. Across countless worlds. And in the gentle rustle of silver leaves in the evening breeze, those who listened carefully could still hear an echo of the voice that had started it all, saying what Li Yemen had always believed, that every ending was just a new beginning waiting to unfold.